Hi there, this is Amy Hall of the Two Glassy Ladies. This is part 3, the final installment for now of my Frit tutorial. So far we've talked about the basics of Frit, exactly what this stuff is anyway, in part 1, and I showed you some simple uses for Frit in part 2, including encasing with and without silver foil. Today I'm going to show you a few more styles of Frit beads. I'm going to show you what I call a Frit swirl bead, which uses the Frit blend in clear glass to create a swirly effect. Next we'll look at sugar beads, which are made with number 00 clear Frit. And finally, we'll look at my lentil swirl beads, which demonstrates the use of the Zoozii's lentil press. I was going to demonstrate my Frit disc beads here as well, but since I already covered that pretty well in one of my other tutorials, I think I will skip it. If you are interested in learning how to make this style of bead, just check my YouTube channel for the disc beads tutorial. So I'll start by demonstrating a Frit swirl bead, which is what I call them. Basically what you do with these is you start with clear glass, and I just use plain old Moretti clear for this because there's so much other stuff going on. It doesn't really matter like if it gets a little bit bubbly in there, so you don't tend to notice it really, and that's sort of the cheapest clear glass that's out there. And you'll need a multicolor Frit to roll it in. So what you're actually going to do in this bead is start with a gather, just a plain gather of clear, and instead of forming it directly around your mandrel, you're going to dip it into your Frit, just the gather. And then you're going to go ahead and take this gather rolled in the Frit and just melt that Frit straight into the gather, kind of gently, and still spinning it until it's all melted in. So once you have the Frit all melted in, actually it's just going to be like making a normal bead. You've got this gather that you're going to wrap around your mandrel, and it's going to create that swirly effect all on its own. It's actually really easy. I sometimes add another layer of Frit on top of the bead for kind of a speckled effect, but with this particular bead, I'm just going to finish it off there. So there's the finished product. It's the Valcock Sweet 16 in clear. The next bead I'm going to show you is called a sugar bead, and you've probably seen these around before. They look like little candies. They use Frit in a relatively small grind. The number is 00, and the Frit is made from clear glass to give that sugared effect. So once again, we're going to start with just a basic round bead. I'm using for my base glass Moretti 031, which is transparent light emerald green, and I'm going to be using the Valcock's crystal clear Frit. I find that the base colors that work the best for these beads are the lighter colors and like the transparents, the lighter transparents, as well as white and clear look really good. I find it helps to have the Frit kind of mounted up in the holder, so you're less likely to distort the shape of your bead. There's not really any reshaping you're going to be able to do of your base bead once you have the Frit on there. The trick is to melt the Frit in just enough so that it stays put, but not too much, because Frit this fine will melt really quickly, and then it'll just melt in and it won't look the way you want it to. Once you have your Frit on the bead, you're only going to give it just like the smallest pass through the flame. You're really not going to melt it in very much at all. And you especially want to pay attention to the two, like the north and south pole, the ends of the bead, because this is where the Frit is most likely to not stick. Around the center, you're usually pretty good, so I like to give it a little bit of, just a tiny little bit of heat at either end. And then that's it, and you put it away. And here's the finished product. The last bead I'm going to show you uses a lentil press and a twist done with a piece of stringer, which I think is a great way to showcase a Frit blend. The twist adds some textural interest to the bead and swirls the Frit around in the base glass, and the flatter face of the lentil allows more room to show off the colors in the Frit blend. For the beads I'm making in this demo, I use the Zoozii's Spree lentil press, a two-tone base of a transparent and opaque blue, and a blend I'm testing out for Valcock's Frit. I use a fairly thick, about 2mm piece of clear stringer to do the twisting. Now the trick with a lentil bead is to start with more of a barrel shape or a football shape than just like a round shape to start with. So I always lay down a fairly long footprint, almost as wide as the press that I'm using. So if I'm using my 18mm lentil press, I'll probably make a base that's about 16 to 17 millimeters long along the mandrel. And it does take some time and practice to be able to correctly estimate the volume of glass that you're going to need to press the lentil successfully. So this is frustrating with pretty much any press that you learn to use, and it just takes a lot of practice is really all that I can say. The lentil presses are probably the easiest presses to start off with because there's a little bit of room for error one way or the other, depending on how particular you are about the precise shape of your lentils, like if you don't mind if some of them are a little fatter than others. The thing I like about the Spree lentil press is that you can get quite a crisp, flat-sided lentil out of it, and you can also do a little bit more of a rounded organic lentil with it. It's sort of up to you. Usually with these beads with the twist, I end up losing a little bit of the crisp shape, and that's totally fine with me. Now, just like all the other beads, once you've got the base down, you're going to roll it in the frit, and then you're going to be pressing it in the lentil press. Another thing that will take a little bit of getting a feel for is how molten the bead needs to be before you press it. It's actually cooler than you think. I usually kind of hold the bead over the press and wait until I see that little bit of a skin starting to form on the glass, and then I press it. You might find that you need to do more than one press, like heat it again and press it again, in order to get quite the shape that you're looking for. Once you're done pressing the bead, you do need to get it back into the flame and get some heat into it, especially at the ends, like as quick as possible, because that press is quite cool and will suck the heat out of the glass really fast. So you don't want to end up with thermal shock. Anyway, so the first thing you're going to do is just kind of like introduce the heat back into it. And then when you've got the face nice and hot, you're going to take your stringer and just poke it right into that center and twist it. And then you can kind of jiggle it back and forth, and it'll just break off on its own. And then you repeat this on the other side, and then you kind of melt the swirls in. Sometimes I have to do the swirls more than once as well, like heat up the spot and twist it again just to get a nice shape to the swirl. And the last thing you want to do before you put the bead away is to try and just give the whole thing one more little soak in the flame to make sure there's no spots that have picked up too much chill, and just kind of smooth it all out, and that's pretty much it. And here again is our finished product with that test blend on, I think that was light turquoise and pale blue. I can't quite remember which colors I used there. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this little tutorial series. This has been really fun. I've showed you all kinds of stuff to do with Frit, and I hope that it's been maybe inspirational, educational to some of you out there. And yeah, so I would definitely recommend that you check out Valcock's Frit because it's very, very wonderful, high quality product, and it's great to work with. And the same goes for the Zoozii's presses, which I have quite a few of now. I'm hoping to do a tutorial on the different presses that I use at some point, but that'll be at a later date. So yeah, check out our website, twoglassyladies.ca, for more information and for where to buy all of my wonderful beads. And thanks again for stopping in. Bye now.
Two Glassy Ladies Productions.